An international team of archaeologists from the United States and Australia has concluded that the first humans to arrive in what we today call the Americas may have actually been Neanderthals or Denisovans. The peer-reviewed paper was published in the prestigious journal Nature. The archaeologists specifically used the term unidentified species of hominid in their paper to emphasize that they believe it was not Homo sapiens. Most archaeologists will simply never believe it. The dates are too old for a site in Paleo-America, the tools are too primitive and the implications too mind-boggling. The claims are extraordinary and the potential implications staggering for some to believe. Indeed, an extraordinary chapter has just been added to the story of the first Americans. Finds at a site in California suggest that the New World might have first been reached at least 130,000 years ago, more than 100,000 years earlier than conventionally thought. This occurred during the last interglacial, known as the Eemian or MIS-5E period. If the evidence stacks up, the earliest humans to reach the Americas may have been Neanderthals or Denisovans rather than modern humans. Researchers may have to come to terms with the fact that they have barely scratched the surface of the North American archaeological record. Chris Stringer at the Natural History Museum in London said, "We often hear statements in the media that a new study changes everything we knew. If this result stands up to scrutiny, it does indeed change everything we thought we knew about the earliest human occupation of the Americas." Indeed, archaeologists were once convinced that the first humans in the Americas were the Clovis, who made a distinctive kind of stone tool. This idea became dogma, and any archaeological sites that seemed older than the Clovis were dismissed, often on flimsy grounds. Only in the past decade or so has pre-Clovis settlement become accepted. The story of how humans got to the Americas isn't a simple one. The New World wasn't conquered by a single group of humans. Different populations migrated and interbred in a tangled web. This is the new normal for human evolution. Clovis first was once the rallying call of archaeologists studying humanity's settlement of the Americas. It referred to the idea that the prehistoric humans who made the distinctive Clovis bone and ivory tools must have been the first humans to enter the New World, about 13,000 years ago. Now we know that was wrong, and the idea that pre-humans could not have populated most of the planet, including Australia and the Americas, is also becoming a house of cards. Like much of the received wisdom about human evolution, the archaeology of the Americas has been subject to revision in recent years. New discoveries leave no doubt that humans arrived earlier than 13,000 years ago, likely far earlier. Some of the evidence for occupation is still hotly contested. Moreover, who these humans were is also proving difficult to pin down. The evidence comes from a coastal site on the west coast of North America of Southern California. In the early 1990s, highway excavations exposed fossil bones belonging to a mastodon, an extinct relative of the elephant. Researchers moved in to examine the site, and they soon decided that this was no ordinary mastodon fossil. Many of the bones and teeth were fragmented, some with spiral fractures that are produced when humans break open fresh bone. Alongside the broken bones and teeth, the researchers found stone cobbles that had evidence of impact marks on their surfaces. Two were particularly large, about 15 centimeters in diameter, and each was surrounded by small bone and teeth fragments. Even Chris Stringer is prepared to be open-minded. The paper has come through thorough peer review, but many of us will want to see supporting evidence of this ancient occupation from other sites before we abandon the conventional model, he said. Taken together, the evidence points to one scenario. A group of early humans, aka hominids, stumbled upon a fresh mastodon carcass and then removed bones and broke them open using stones as simple hammers, with the two larger cobbles serving as makeshift anvils. The distribution of fractured pieces of bone around the anvils is fairly conclusive evidence. The mastodon bones would have been a good source of nutritious bone marrow, which is like gold to ancient peoples. Alternatively, the early humans might have broken the bones to use as raw material. Bone can be worked and sharpened to create tools. But archaeologists and geologists spent about 4 years looking at these artifacts, and the team has been looking at the evidence for about 25 years. It's understandable that it might be difficult for some people to wrap their brain around the nature of this evidence. But the interdisciplinary team has very strong arguments and good evidence. None of this would be particularly controversial except for one detail. Geologists used uranium-thorium isotope dating to age the mastodon fossils. The results suggest the remains are 131,000 years old, give or take 10,000 years. This date range is very important because of the timing of the aforenoted interglacial period. However, the archaeologists believe they have a robust and defensible age for early humans, aka hominids such as Denisovans, being in America more than 100,000 years earlier than people had imagined. Exactly who those ancient humans were is impossible to say, because there were no human fossils at the site. But there are a range of possibilities, say the archaeologists. They could have been Neanderthals or Denisovans or some closely related branch. Both of these groups of ancient humans were probably present in Siberia more than 130,000 years ago. In fact, sea levels were low and a land bridge existed between Siberia and North America just 130,000 years ago. Either group could in theory have just wandered across. Another possibility is that during the warm period starting around 125,000 years ago, when seas were 20 feet higher than today and virtually no glacier existed in the northern hemisphere, they could have used boats. We know that hominids made it to remote islands in the Philippines and Indonesia that were never connected to the mainland during even the lowest sea levels, almost 1 million years ago. These hominids were hunting pygmy hippos and elephants on those islands, so they were capable hunters. These were probably Homo erectus or some closely related species. So, if Homo erectus could build a boat, then chances are that Denisovans, who are known to have made sophisticated jewelry and tools, could have made sophisticated boats. Genetic evidence puts Denisovans in Papua New Guinea and Australia, which are essentially one landmass, except during warm periods like today, suggesting they were capable seafarers. Denisovans also lived in the Tibetan Plateau at altitudes above 10,000 feet and passed on genes which help people today breathe at high altitudes and hold their breath for long periods underwater. Dragon Man, who lived in northeastern China, and whose skull is dated to at least 146,000 years ago, is another intriguing possibility. He was living in a very northerly location, which would have been very cold and required technology such as clothing and shelters to survive. He had a massive cranium, and was probably a Denisovan or closely related creature, and what he was doing living in such a cold climate is a mystery in itself. For example, 130,000 years ago, hominins elsewhere in the world were making elaborate stone tools. Nothing this complicated was found near the mastodon. These tools would have been something that primitive Homo erectus, such as Peking man or Java man, would have used. Doubters have said they would expect to find more sophisticated tools, but the absence of evidence is not evidence. Nonetheless, simple stone tools of a similar age have been found in only one place during this period. Homo floresiensis, the Hobbit, left a record of relatively simple stone tools on the Indonesian island of Flores. But even these tools show a level of complexity not seen at the mastodon site. Recent evidence suggests Homo erectus may have survived until at least 100,000 years ago on nearby Java, indicating that they were around longer than once suspected. Less likely, the hunters might have been modern humans, Homo sapiens, that made it to the New World 130,000 years ago. Recent archaeological evidence suggests our species was in China over 100,000 years ago, which is much earlier than once thought. Perhaps modern humans were in East Asia even earlier than the Chinese fossils suggest, and moved into the Americas from there. However, given that genetic studies strongly suggest that indigenous populations in North America trace their roots to much later episodes of colonization, it would seem likely that whatever hominids arrived there 130,000 years ago didn't survive to mate with modern humans. It should also be noted that the authors of the paper stated that they have no conflicts of interest. And when it comes to this site, one thing is sure, you can't pin the blame on the Cro-Magnons.